as life sometimes will do. His friends looked on in pity, assuming he was through.
So you guys are live.
Okay.
We're doing Tira?
We're gonna do this poem. He's gonna start the poem again, and then we'll move on after we talk about that to Syria.
Okay.
I lost the rhythm. I have to read it again.
Right.
Let me take a second. Life handed him a lemon, as life sometimes will do. His friends looked on in pity, assuming he was through. They came upon him later, reclining in the shade, in calm contentment, drinking a glass of lemonade. That's the story of life.
For some, a lot of people get that lemon and aren't able to recover.
I envied him. Anyway, go ahead.
This is the old farts, and kicking around various topics during the course of the hour. The first one I'd like to talk about is Syria. Obviously, the balance of power in the Middle East has changed radically, particularly in the last year.
Yep.
And at some point, the United States has to make a decision as to what to do or what not to do to influence events that ideally would benefit the United States. And I've got a whole bunch of ideas, but I imagine everybody else does. So somebody want to start it off?
If I may, I'd like to backtrack a tiny bit and go back to, I forget when the last major war that Israel was involved in. And at the end of the war, I remember reading about it recently, at the end of the war, the big decision was whether or not to, they had a time limit. They were told that, the war was over and Israel was supposed to stop. And according to what I read, they decided they were going to respond to, what was his name? The leader, the one who's run away now. I can't,
Assad?
my head doesn't work.
Assad.
Who?
Assad.
Assad, yes. They were going to, and they did. They invaded his country to a certain extent, and this was the result of the geographical situation where Syria was way up high and they were shooting into, and one of these young people, one of the young military people decided that he wanted to respond before they called a final halt to the last war that Israel was involved in. And I'm not as well versed on it as I should be. Pardon me?
2006 or 8, I can't remember.
2006 or 8, yes, that particular war. At any rate, they did, and they actually had some young people who they climbed up into the Syrian country and chased the Syrians back, but never actually came to a settlement with them. I'm not making too much sense, but that was the last time that Israel. So now, to hear within the last day or so that the leader of Syria has run away, and there's a group in there that is actually chasing him and his party out, is, I think, pretty good news, especially for Israel. I'm always amazed when I hear about anything that Israel is pretty much forced to do. We can go through all the wars that they have fought, and fought with success in general, really. I think their situation is extremely difficult. I personally my feelings go out to the Israelis for what they've done, what they've accomplished, what they're trying to do, and I think they are. I've always believed that they're quite justified in being where they are. The current crisis or crises in that part of the world are, once again, very serious. I don't know where we're going, and I don't know how much more Israel can take in terms of having to face just about everyone in that part of the world as opposed to them. I'm not making too much, I'm not being very specific, but at any rate.
But let me try to make some sense out of what you just said. It is really complicated. You have to recognize that Assad was facing militants. Now the militants have ousted him. Now the militants who ousted him are a branch of the ISIS. Now the question is, who facilitated this ISIS group to become so powerful that made Assad to run away? That's number one. Number two is, given that they are Islamic militants, what is their approach to Israel, to United States, and Iran, for that matter? They have made statements. I have not been able to follow them, but it is interesting that at the same time you have to. What I have been thinking about is, how did they become so powerful suddenly that they could take over and run over Aleppo and other cities and Damascus and take over? And who is behind all that? So that's my question. But given that they are part of the larger ISIS group, I would wonder how United States is going to tackle them, and what the implications will there be for Israel. Although Israel has already gone into the Iraq, the Syrian territory to really take over some of the heights there, so that they are protected. That's good. But at the same time, the larger picture is, what is the later thing going to happen? With that, I'm going to stop.
One item, and that is HST, I can't pronounce the Arabic version. That group used to be part of Al-Qaeda, not ISIS.
Yeah, Al-Qaeda, that's it. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, yeah.
Okay, and
I'm sorry, I said ISIS, Al-Qaeda, right. Actually.
Because of all the groups that are involved in the attack on the Assad regime, ISIS was not one of them.
Yeah, Al-Qaeda, I'm sorry, yeah.
Again, we're trying to guess as to what's going on, and I imagine that the Syrians themselves, and I'm not talking about the civilians, the rebels who conquered Assad, don't know what's going on, because it's not just one group. There's about 4 or 5 groups.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That control different parts of the country. And they
there's one primary group that is.
There's one group that's a spokesman. I don't know how much control they actually have. It's probably at this point somewhat up in the air. But there are groups that are Iranian-backed, they're Turkish-backed, there are Jordanian-backed. There may even be 1 or 2 that are, well, Hezbollah is Iranian-backed. And they're going to have to sort out over some period of time who's in charge of what, whether there will be a Syria in the same way as, remember, Libya, when Gaddafi was toppled. They ended up with a bunch of fiefdoms. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if that's the way Syria ends up.
Because at this time I would be worried about what is the fate of the minorities in Syria. And when Assad was around, there was some level of protection for the Syrian minorities.
Right.
And now I don't know what is going to happen.
Well, the guy who's the spokesman, who's the head of HST, has, number one, said we're not going to persecute minorities. They will be protected.
What is HST? Is that
That's the
it's a
name
control
of the.
group?
It's one of the groups, but it's the one that's
In charge
seemingly
somewhere.
in charge.
Yeah.
The problem, of course, and oh, by the way, there have been no reprisals to this point. But you can look at the Taliban a few years ago. They also said, we've learned we're not going to go back to the way things were. And in a year or two, they were back to pretty much the same laws that were in place before they were toppled. So it's probably not clear what's going to happen. Israel has decided, and originally I was not happy, but the more I think about it, I think may be the right move, that they are attacking the Syrian army posts, trying to destroy all the hardware. And they claim that they're not going to occupy the territory. They're just trying to when the terrorist groups, they're assuming that this will happen, when the terrorist groups take control of the army, that they won't have the equipment necessary to do a full-fledged invasion. I don't.
I always get the feeling that when I hear about the wars that Israel has been faced with, and all of the things that are going on there, that Iran has a major. I just lost my hearing aid.
Mm-hmm.
Iran has a major say in what is going on.
Well, they were certainly funding Hezbollah,
Yeah.
which was the primary fighting force in the area for a long time. Chuck, you haven't chimed in yet.
No, that's okay. I'm not well versed on this topic, and I know problems are going on and so forth, but I'm not. I don't feel that I should comment on anything because I don't know enough about it.
I think it's brand new for me too. That whole scene is brand new, Chuck. So don't feel as though you're alone.
Well, I
Grasp,
just
trying to
personally think
grasp.
we've got it. I just personally think we've got enough things going on in this country that are more relative to us to discuss than talking about something that's happening thousands of miles away. But that's not my choice.
Well,
And I just
again,
don't. I didn't have the foresight to do this to see that this might be a topic for tonight.
Just one point I just wanted to make, and that is that region. If you are interested in Bible, you would be interested in the region, because that is the region that gave us the Bible, the region that gave us the Quran, and that is a region that has always been in turmoil. It's not it is nothing new. And if you look at history, every time there has been something going on which people didn't like, but it is still there.
And I agree with you.
Well, the other thing to look at is, in today's world, just because something's 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 or 5,000 miles away, doesn't make it irrelevant.
I never said it was irrelevant.
Okay. So
I just said that I wasn't knowledgeable enough about this particular topic, so I'm not going to talk about something that I really don't have enough knowledge about.
It's
Aware of problems. I know it's an important issue, but I have not focused on that to an extent.
It's fresh news for me too. I mean, we're almost waiting to see what is going to, and I imagine the Israelis are looking deep into it, trying to figure out what's going on too.
Well, I think they're trying to not just watch and wait. They're taking action. Israel's kind of in an interesting situation. They are winning all the battles. Hezbollah has basically said, okay, we're done at least for a while. Hamas appears to be willing to do a ceasefire. Syria is in trouble. But can they win the war? Among other things, the Israeli army is made up in large measure of civilians, reservists. And when the reservists are mobilized to the extent that they have been, the Israeli economy is in deep trouble. So at some point, Israel is going to have to cut back on the mobilization. And that may be a reason why even the rightist part of the government, who seems to want to create a greater Israel, might be willing to, at least for the time being, calm down.
Well, with the ultra right saying we will not go and fight, that's another problem there.
Well, that has been true for a long, long time. And I think the Israeli public is less willing to put up with it, particularly under the circumstances where the army is essentially taken over and the economy is limping along at best.
The other part you forgot about is that this Lebanon is there. In addition to Jordan, you have Syria turmoil, you have the Lebanon in turmoil, and throw in Hezbollah and Hamas. It's I don't know. It's a very difficult place for Israel to continuously be battling. So I'm sure they have a long-term plan to come out victorious.
Everybody has a plan, but one of the things I think that the Middle East in general has been a battle between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And the attack on Israel from Gaza, Robert Krieg, personally think, I'm not, is that just before that, Saudi Arabia was seriously considering trying to do something to join the Abraham Accords.
Yes.
To recognize Israel, to have technical and commercial interaction. One of the things they were making, the way I understand it, was that in order to do that, there had to be some kind of a resolution of the Palestinian problem. If all of that happened, Iran would be even more isolated than it had been. And I personally think that Iran allowed, if not encouraged the attack on Israel, with the idea that if you make it as brutal and as humiliating as you possibly can, Israel will overreach, which I think they have to some extent, and the world will no longer be sympathetic to Israel. And so those nations who were always anti-Israel their situation would improve. And I think Iran overreached. And now I think they're in deep trouble, and they're going to have to figure out some way to calm everything down so they can rebuild. Even the Houthis are evidently, they're the ones who were trying to close down the Suez Canal. They seem to have cut back in their activities. So maybe short term, things will be calm. I don't know.
So are you saying that because of Israel's standing, its current situation, the Houthis and Iran in particular, it always appears to me every time I pick up the paper and it seems as though Iran is the major player in that whole area in terms of opposition to Israel.
I agree.
That other group there, I can't even think of their names.
Hamas.
Pardon me? No, the ones that are on the other side of the canal that are shooting at American ships.
The Houthis.
The Houthis, yes, the Houthis.
Yemen.
Yemen, thank you. It seems to me that they're I don't know exactly what their point is. What are they? Are they simply in support? And if they are, why are they in support of what Iran wants in particular?
Iran is
the major player.
Is funding them. They are Iranian-backed. Their main opposition is the Yemeni government, which was Saudi Arabian-backed. And so there'd been for a number of years a civil war going on. And the Houthis appear to have triumphed, not totally, but and when Israel, which is the focal point, everybody can agree who to hate. They don't necessarily agree on who to love. So Israel is the object that everybody can agree on. When Hamas went after Israel, the Houthis and Hezbollah said, we're supporting you. Now, they weren't supporting to the extent of doing a full-fledged invasion.
Yeah.
But they were tying down Israeli assets.
Yeah.
So after a year, Israel just said, okay, we're done. And evidently was able to eliminate those problems. And since Iran was doing things via their surrogates, Iran's power in the region is in trouble. And then Assad, who was a Iranian ally, is gone. And as far as I can tell, HST and at least some of the other groups associated with the Syrian revolution are not fans of Iran. Now, the Iraqis are another potential place where Iran can foment some problems, because the government is relatively closely aligned with Iran. So there's another potential area. And oh, by the way, why do we care? Because there's an awful lot of oil, and maybe we in the United States don't need it, but our friends throughout the world do.
That, I think, is probably the primary reason, is or the underlying reason, the oil, the oil that they're looking for. Yeah, I have the clear feeling that that Iran is the one that is pretty much. I think they even control the Houthis. Yeah.
Well, whether they control them or whether they are the primary backer, the latter is definitely true. I don't know how much direct control they have.
Who is the leader of the Houthis? Do you know? I mean, is there anyone? Every time I hear about something that's going on there, I never come across an individual that is supposed to be the leader of that.
I've heard the name, but I couldn't tell you what it was.
Yeah.
When I hear the names, I can't remember how to pronounce these names or whatever. So
it's not Kelly.
That's my problem.
It's not Kelly.
I have the same problem with French leaders. So.
With French leaders?
In the whole region, you have the problem is they have a lot of oil. On the one hand, you have Iran with a lot of oil. On the other hand, you have Saudi Arabia with a lot of oil. And given all that oil money, Saudi Arabia has been exporting terrorism all over the world. And Iran with a lot of oil is doing the same, except that there's a big divide, religious divide between Iran and Saudi Arabia. They would like to kill each other, but at the same time, as Bob pointed out, they have one entity they can hate together. But at the same time, the undercurrent is how can we become bigger than the other? So that's why there is this constant turmoil between what the forces are are being supported by Iran on the one hand and Saudi Arabia on the other, and it's not going to end unless we somehow go in with a huge syringe and take out all the oil and drain it out, and then hopefully by that time they will be, and no, don't give them any money.
Well,
It's unrealistic what I'm saying, but that's
Right.
what the problem is. Because you have a lot of money with underground, and they keep on getting that, and people throughout the world depend on it. Unfortunately, unless the whole world comes up with an alternative to fossil fuels, alternative to all the chemicals that can be that are derived from petroleum, up to that time, the turmoil is going to continue.
well, actually, in a sense, we're in the process of doing that. It's called renewable energy. And it won't happen right away. And oh, by the way, Saudi Arabia is investing very heavily in it because they can see the handwriting on the wall as well. But if I personally think if we could figure out how to have portable renewable energy so that people's cars can take advantage of it, then suddenly oil, not only in the Middle East, but in Russia and in the United States and Mexico and Venezuela and all these other places, will become far, far, far less important.
And the sad thing actually about the whole thing is that all folks who have oil, any of these countries you just mentioned, they have problems, and they have problems in a way that they create more problems for the rest of the world. And they have problems in the country, they have problems they want to create other places, and the whole world is in turmoil because of this. So I don't know. The solution, as I said, is to just take the oil out quickly, but that's not going to happen.
True.
At some point, Israel might just get fed up enough and take out their oil fields in Iran as well as their nuclear facilities. And we'll see where we
I
stand then.
was surprised that that hadn't already happened. I would imagine that their top brass is very much looking into something like that. I would think that that's what they would want to do. I also have the, and I really don't have anything that I can cite or point to, but it seems to me that Iran is the major problem in that whole area. That if Iran was, I don't even know what to say, whether they were out of the picture, whether they were beaten by the Israelis. I think it would be I think that whole Middle East problem would settle in a different way. Is it the oil? Is it the desire to control the oil? Is that the underlying cause? Besides hatred for one another.
Well, it's not besides. The hatred is number one. And
yeah, but why do they hate?
Because one is Shia, the other one is Sunni.
Oh, now
Shia
you're getting into Shia and Sunni. Okay, now that
Sunni
yes.
Sunni would like to kill off all the Shia. Shia would like to kill off all the Sunnis. But it's kind of strange. They are all supposedly Muslims, but that's what they want to do. Would like to do. But the unfortunate thing is, both of these entities have oil, and both of these have billions of dollars coming into their coffers, and they can afford to throw a few pennies towards a few people who are willing to kill themselves.
My,
On them.
my understanding is the leader of the top person in Iran, whatever he's called, the mullah or whatever, he's getting up there in age, and they don't have a real successor in who's going to be able to step in at this point. They're not sure who that will be, and that could turn the country upside down.
Well, there is a succession. What I was following is there is his son probably will take over, but that's not going to be. But that's not going to provide any relief to the whole thing.
Keep in mind that in order to play in the upper levels of Iran, you have to be essentially part of the group. So when they elected a moderate president in this case is merely the person who's in charge of implementing the policies of the council. He wasn't all that moderate. He was just a heck of a lot more moderate than some of the other alternatives. I think oil is a means to an end, and the end is control, is power.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
it's kind of like Elon Musk. Elon Musk has $400 billion, I think I just heard.
Yeah.
He now has it. He doesn't need more money. What he wants is control. So what he's done is he's made investments, and now he's going to use those investments to control the U.S. government and possibly other areas as well.
Is that scary?
Now you're drifting off, Bob.
Yes, I am. But I'm trying to get to something you'd be more interested in talking about. No, but it's essentially a very similar kind of thing where money in and of itself, after a while, doesn't mean anything. Money as a means to have power being the ability to do something. And maybe what you want done is that people bow down and kiss your feet. Maybe you want to build some great building. Maybe you want to establish a religion or promote a religion, or maybe you want to feed all the people in the world. Power is the ability to do those things. And I think in the Middle East, oil is a means to an end. And if it wasn't for the fact that the rest of the world runs on oil, the Middle East would be as meaningless as it was at the beginning of the 20th century. Well,
I don't know. I don't know.
If we're tired of Syria, how about Ukraine? There appears to be some movement there. Zelensky is beginning to mumble a little bit about maybe we could talk a bit about some of the things that are on Russia's wish list. Does that make sense? If it were you in Zelensky's shoes, would you be willing to give up a third of your country in order to have peace?
You think Russia?
Peace because keep in mind when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1990, Ukraine had a whole bunch of nuclear weapons, and they agreed to give those weapons back to Russia in return for guarantees that Russia would not invade them or try to topple them. How'd that work out?
I mean that's just like a pact between a mouse and actually a hungry cat.
Yes, I agree.
It's so sad, but that is the reality. Actually, they should have known. I mean, they would have known this already. that Russia has always claimed the territory there, and Russia is not going to give up. And particularly given that Ukraine is trying to crawl into the bed with NATO, and so the question is for Trump. Well, Trump is trying to somehow get them together, but the question you are asking is, will Ukraine cede some territory? But I would imagine if they are pressured, they might, because their existence is on the line. Actually, how long can the Ukrainian war can last? Actually, I mean, it's a losing game from day one. The only thing Ukraine has going for themselves is they are the granary of Europe, or something like that people talk about. But that land, if it is bombarded all the time, who's going to farm it? Nobody.
Who's going to be alive to farm it? They're killing
Yeah, you got to be alive
lots
to
and
farm
lots
it.
of people.
So I would posit that Zelensky might bend and come up with a compromise somehow if Trump pushes him enough.
By the way, what happens to Zelensky once the war is over?
He seeks asylum under Trump.
I was about to suggest that. I'm not sure if Trump would go along with that, though.
I think that is that will be his alternative. I don't think he can live there.
No, he would be on Putin's hit list
Yeah.
day one. And actually amazing that he has survived as long as he has, because he's kind of the symbol of the Ukrainian resistance. But what about all the other people in Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian army?
Are you asking
I
what
would
would happen to them?
I have my
there
own
was,
idea.
If there was a ceasefire,
Yeah.
God, I don't know. I can't. I mean, why would you expect anything unusual to happen to them? Why? They've been working for the Ukrainian people. I mean, the assumption is if they're fighting for them, they represent them. Why would there be anything unusual that would happen to them?
Well, everywhere where the Russian army took over in Ukraine,
Right.
there was a purge of everybody who,
Was opposed to Russia.
yeah,
They purged them.
right,
So now if there's a ceasefire
right.
and an agreement of one sort or another between the Ukrainians and Russia, why would you expect anything special to happen to the Ukrainians? I'm not following that train of thought. I
That
would
might be
imagine
one of
that.
the conditions.
And the
That might
leader
become one of the conditions.
himself has been, I from what I've seen and what I've heard, what I've read, he has been very well accepted. Why would there be a change? I would think that he would still be
Because
the
the
leader.
Russians would enforce a change. When you make an agreement, both sides have to have an advantage for that agreement to exist, and a disadvantage should the agreement no longer exist.
So Russia would insist on him being ousted?
They wouldn't have to insist on it, they would just take care of it.
That's the problem. Yes. That's
Yeah.
why I said he better to seek asylum with Trump, and that's the end of that. But as you said, maybe Trump may not like that, but maybe that will be one of the conditions. Because I would imagine if the compromise is set up, a treaty is made, I think Putin is going to dictate terms which Zelensky might not like, but that might be the alternative.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm trying to anticipate what those terms might be that he would be willing to accept. Because if the terms are too harsh, he might as well continue to fight.
Giving up the portion of the land that it's a big country. Ukraine
Yeah.
is a
Very
one of
large
the
country.
bigger countries in there. I mean, I don't know how to compare them with, but from what I've seen on the map, they are a big country. If they concede the land so far that Russia has taken, I'm not sure. Are there ports in there that are critical in that area?
Well, Crimea, which
Crimea
is,
the Crimea.
Crimea would be one of the major things that Russia would insist on.
Yeah.
And that's got major ports into
Yeah.
the Black Sea.
But there are others from what
Yeah,
looking at the map.
Odessa is, I should know this, but I don't. Odessa is a little bit to the left and south, I think, of Crimea. I think.
I mean,
Yeah.
as far as
No,
I
I
can
think you're
tell,
right.
they want all the eastern area of north and east
Right.
of Ukraine, because that way they will get the chunk along with Crimea.
What do you think Trump is going to do with regard to, that whole affair, that whole issue? Is he going to? He has threatened to either ignore it, or I'm not sure what he can do. I mean, I can't imagine that he can just. I can't believe that he could ignore that. It's too critical.
Well, my understanding, well, certainly he was supporting the American
Trump. No.
the American legislatures who were saying, we're spending too much money, we're not getting anything for it, let everybody fight themselves, we don't want to be involved.
I think I heard Trump say a while ago that he felt if he got elected, he would resolve the issue within a couple of weeks or within a month.
I've
Well, it was
seen that
actually
too.
within a day, but
Within
yeah.
a day, he said, I
but-
hope that happens.
Well, it depends. One way to resolve the issue is to drop an atomic bomb on Ukraine. I don't think that would be a useful thing. So there's got to be, again, the agreement has got to have benefits for both sides. And maybe what he's saying is, hey, Ukraine, if you don't give up, we're going to stop giving you arms and money, and so you'll be done anyway, so you might as well. That ignores the fact that Europe has been contributing a great deal in terms of money and arms, so they might consider continuing. As a matter of fact, there was several articles that I was reading earlier in the year where Europe was planning on, okay, if Trump becomes president and he stops providing aid, what can Europe do?
I'd be surprised if Europe's contributing as a collective group. I'd be surprised if they're contributing more money than the United States alone is. They could be, but I'd be surprised.
Particularly now, there's a fair amount that they're contributing. Now, whether it's equal or not, I don't know.
Well, Europe has a problem because Europe is taking a lot of petroleum products from Russia, and they depend on all that. And I don't know how will they compromise that trade with supplying arms and ammunition, and it's a kind of a quandary in that they have.
Well, Russia, think of it this way, Russia's whole war effort, whole economy is based on oil.
Yes.
And if nobody's buying it, then they don't have any money. So it's one of those things where, oh, we hate these people, we're fighting with these people, but we're selling them oil because it's necessary. And certainly since the beginning of the war, the United States has upped natural gas, which is a key area, deliveries to replace the stuff that Russia either isn't selling or in some cases has blown up the pipelines that would send the natural gas to Europe. So yeah, I imagine it's a problem, but it's not as much of a problem as it might have been 2 years ago.
What do you think Trump's motive is? I mean, not his motive, but what do you think Trump is? What is he planning on doing once he takes office? he has said, you all know, resolve it within a matter of so many hours, and he'd take care. Do you have an idea as to what he plans on doing?
I personally think his goal is to be a hero. He would love to.
To be a hero? Well,
Hero.
that's a given.
Well, no,
who
but-
wouldn't? Yeah.
But I think that is the goal. That,
But
again,
what can
personal
he do
opinion.
in order to make it work? What can he do to become the so-called hero?
Well, for example, he told Hamas, if you don't get the hostages back by the time I become president, there'll be hell to pay. So he's going to take credit for if Hamas comes up with a deal, he'll take credit for that. If Ukraine is resolved, if that thing is resolved, he'll take credit for it.
Shouldn't he? If he's forcing them to
Yeah,
come up with a
Well-
ceasefire.
but I think that is the goal more than other possible things like, hey, if we don't have the Ukraine war, the oil prices will come down. If we don't have the Ukraine war, food prices will come down because Russia won't be blockading the wheat. There are a bunch of other things going on that may benefit or hurt, as the case may be, America, the West, whatever. And I don't think that's really his primary motivation.
Wait to see. I'm waiting to see if he'll invite Putin to his inauguration. Trump.
Oh.
I was thinking about that. There's a problem.
He invited Xi the other day.
Did she agree?
I haven't heard yet.
I was listening to something on the radio as I was coming down here, and this particular broadcaster was saying, I don't think Xi will accept. It just gets too complicated. Putin is more interesting because if Putin comes, he's under indictment and subject to arrest by Interpol. So if he came, that would create some very interesting issues.
I mean, I personally haven't heard anything about an invitation to him. I was just speculating based upon
No,
him.
I haven't
I was
inviting
thinking-
Xi.
I was thinking the same thing. So yeah, I agree. It would be very interesting, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to happen. The same thing with the Israeli premier. It would create a major international issue if he was invited and attended, because he's subject to arrest as well.
But there is nothing wrong in if he has a personal, I mean, notwithstanding the Interpol, but what I'm saying is, notwithstanding that, the inviting the heads of the states who other folks perceive as enemies, if he has a rapport with them, why not? That's what I think.
Well, the heads of state in Europe were almost falling all over Trump when he was there for the cathedral. They couldn't seem to get enough of being able to be next to him, shaking his hand, and everything else.
I mean, you have to recognize he represents us all. Come January 20, so that's a big market, big force,
Right.
big international presence. So you gotta take it with that.
And in addition, he responds very positively to people fawning all over him. So it behooves you to say, okay, we'll be nice to you right now because we don't want to start off the relationship any worse off than we would otherwise be. And I think that's true, but if you look at Netanyahu, Putin, these are people that Trump has gone out of his way to praise. But the other thing to look at is no head of state has ever attended an inaugural of a U.S. president. Ambassadors
Oh, that's
all the
interesting. I
time.
hadn't thought of that.
None has ever done that. And
You're saying what, Bob?
no head of state
No head of state.
has ever
Foreign
attended,
head of state
foreign head of state has ever attended a
has
U.S.
ever
inaugural.
attended. Yeah, yeah.
Really?
I
I
hadn't
never
thought
heard
of that.
So
What wasn't Lafayette here when Washington? But Lafayette was not a head of state, though.
right.
Yeah, you're right. I think you're right. Lafayette did come. Yeah.
I don't know if he came to the United States sometime during that period, but I don't remember.
He came at the
But he wasn't head of state.
He
If
was
Louis
not,
the
yes.
16th had shown up, that would have been something. If Napoleon had shown up, obviously that was later. So it's
So nobody from Canada or England or France, they never have
No,
showed up for any.
I have never heard of anyone. I don't.
I
think
don't know.
so.
I've never even thought about it before.
and
Yeah,
I don't
me
think
neither.
I don't think a U.S. president has ever gone to a English inauguration. Certainly didn't go to Charles III's inauguration. Their ambassador was there, I think, and I think that's common. I just don't think that the head of state, and that would be the interesting issue.
I'm surprised by that.
I am too. Yeah.
I'll have to do some. You have some place where you can find that information out. Where you got that information from, Bob?
I got it because when they were talking about Xi, somebody
about what?
about Xi, the Chinese president who's being invited. They said this would be the first time. So somebody did the research. I don't
the first
know.
time a Chinese person.
No,
but I'm
the
not
first
sure
time
about other
any head of
countries.
state.
Okay.
Especially unusual if it's Chinese. The first ones that come.
Well,
Wow.
it's
I've never
interesting.
thought of it. I agree with you. I've never
yeah.
thought of it either.
If I thought that Xi would be impressed and be more willing to compromise on things like Taiwan or South China Sea or something, I'd say go for it. But I don't think Xi cares one way or another. Certainly not to the extent he'd be willing to change policy.
Well, from the Chinese viewpoint, Chinese look long term,
Yeah,
and they know here we have 4 years, 4 years, 4 years. They have long term goals. So Taiwan is one of those. So they are on the lookout, waiting to do the things when they are ready.
yeah. That's another interesting question. Should the United States physically defend Taiwan?
They've threatened to.
We talk about it, but when push comes to shove,
I
when
thought
an
I
invasion's-
read that they were threatening the Chinese, saying that we would respond if, you know.
But
So
that was under a Democratic president. Would Trump? I don't know if Trump would or would not. I have no idea. But the real question is, should we? Why is this little island so important that we would risk nuclear war?
my understanding was that they were making components that were absolutely critical to the American, I forget exactly what they were, but they were critical to the American economy, especially
Isn't that a
defense.
major chip maker?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Korea is a chip maker, right?
we do.
I don't know if it's
Korea, South Korea.
I remember reading that we don't. We were trying to set up a system whereby we could compete with Taiwan, but as of the moment, I haven't seen anything that says that we can compete. We still need. And then the other thing is that don't we have some sort of an agreement with the countries that are there, Japan in particular? But
there is
two or
called-
three other countries.
There
that
is
were-
an Indo-Pacific agreement or something
yeah.
to counter the Chinese.
And with, yeah, between
I
Japan
I
and
can't imagine
Philippines.
that the United States would
Australia.
not respond if China decided to attack Taiwan or bomb Taiwan or whatever. I think America would respond. I think they would. What would it look like if they didn't?
Maybe it look like Ukraine.
No, I think Ukraine is a different kind of situation. It's not
I
just
wonder.
a different country. It's a different kind of problem.
Well, I mean, Taiwan is an island. They can blockade it in a day, and that's the end of Taiwan.
Yeah.
But they
I'm
tried
not
doing
sure our
that in
military
Berlin.
is in a position to do that.
I mean, Chinese can do that.
Chinese,
Yes, you're right.
right? But keep in mind, Berlin was surrounded by East Germany, and they blockaded Berlin, and we flew
Yeah.
supplies in, and
Yeah.
and Russia was not willing to shoot down our planes. Is China willing to shoot down our planes if we decide that we're going to provide food to Taiwan?
But where are you going to get the food from? Taiwan is an island, and that means you will have to get it from Japan. I don't know how long it takes to go from Japan to Taiwan.
Not, I don't think it's very far away. Hundreds of miles, I think.
But it's not going from West Germany to Berlin.
Right, but you could buy the food from Australia, from Philippines, from South America, wherever it is that Taiwan gets their food today. It would be a question of delivery. And
That's what I'm saying.
would China be willing to shoot down American supply planes? Suddenly the shoe's on the other foot.
I think that's a question that will make Marco Rubio to lose his sleep when he joins.
I'm not sure how independent Marco Rubio is going to be.
I mean, those are the issues that I imagine. I don't know. I imagine the secretaries of state worry about all the time before opening their mouth.
But I don't think that he's going to have much to say on policy. I think the policy is going to be dictated out of the White House. And
Yes, but he will have to implement them.
well, yeah,
That's-
right. And you just see Blinken right now. The policy is that we want a ceasefire in Gaza, and he's running back and forth like a maniac, trying to
Yes.
get that done. It ain't happening. And whether it's his idea or not to be running back and forth, I think people are telling him, okay, you can do this, you can't do that.
Are
Who's
you
running-
assuming that
who's running
Blinken is
back and
going to
forth?
stay on?
No,
He wouldn't
Blinken-
be. He would be
Blinken.
replaced, I would
He
think.
will be
Blinken's,
replaced.
yeah.
What do you mean?
I mean, that's why I said the next one is Marco Rubio. He will be running back and forth, and you don't want that person's job.
No, not
Marco
not really.
Rubio is a much better qualified person than Blinken.
Yeah, but the job is still a tough one.
Yeah, oh yeah, no doubt.
Why is Marco Rubio more qualified? What in his background makes him more qualified than somebody who's been a Secretary of State for 4 years? I don't know. I don't know enough about Rubio's background other than the fact that he's been senator from Florida for 2 terms, I think.
Yeah.
I don't, I'd have to think about it before. I have not heard a whole lot of great things about Blinken and some of his past history. So anyway, so we'd have to get maybe set up some time where we can talk about that.
Okay, that's fair, because I don't know what its past history either. So I'm not in a position to say something, but he's been Secretary of State for 4 years, and the world has not come to an end.
Well, it's come pretty close.
Okay.
He hasn't in my eyes, he hasn't distinguished himself very well He was involved in Afghanistan decisions.
Well, to some extent that's true, but understand something. We were talking at the beginning of the show on Syria, and suddenly Syria's army collapsed. The same thing happened to Afghanistan. People made agreements based on the idea that the army would fight for at least some period of time, and it didn't. And I think the same thing happened to Assad. And we don't know, certainly don't know about what happened in Syria, but the Syrian army, which was reasonably competent, I was told, quit.